I never thought I'd be the kind of person to have a breakup story that feels like a novel, but here I am, typing this out like it's the only way to make sense of the chaos swirling inside me. It all started on a gray Thursday evening, the kind where the sky seems to press down on your chest and every breath feels heavier than the last. I was waiting for him at our usual coffee shop, but when he finally showed up, his eyes told a story I wasn't ready to hear. He looked tired, more tired than I'd ever seen him. Not just physically, but like he was carrying a weight I couldn't lift for him. When he sat down, he didn't smile or reach for my hand as usual. Instead, he just stared at his coffee, swirling it absent-mindedly, the silence between us stretching longer than any conversation had before. I tried to break the silence with small talk, but the words died on my tongue. Then he finally said it, the words I knew were coming, but somehow still stabbed at my heart with fresh pain. I think we need to take a break. Just like that. No dramatic build-up, no shouting match. Just a quiet surrender that shattered everything I thought was solid between us. The rest of the night was a blur of tears, half-hearted apologies, and desperate attempts to understand. I kept asking him why, what changed, if there was someone else. But his answers were vague, wrapped in confusion and regret. It felt like the foundation of my world had cracked, and I was standing on the edge, about to fall into something unknown and terrifying. For days after, I was a ghost in my own life. I went through the motions, but everything felt muted, colors dulled, sounds softened. Friends tried to reach out, but I pushed them away, convinced no one could fix what was broken inside me. Even my favorite music sounded sadder now, like it knew the story of my heartbreak and was mourning with me. One afternoon, while scrolling mindlessly through my phone, I stumbled across old photos of us, laughing at the beach, holding hands under city lights, stealing kisses in the rain. Each image was a bittersweet reminder of what used to be, and I realized I was clinging to memories like a lifeline, afraid to let go even though they cut deep. I remember sitting on the floor of my apartment, surrounded by those photos, feeling like my heart was unraveling thread by thread. How had everything changed so fast? Just weeks ago, we were planning trips and dreaming out loud, and now I couldn't even picture a future where he was still a part of my story. The hardest part wasn't just the breakup itself, it was the silence that followed. No calls, no texts, no explanations. It was like he'd vanished from my life, leaving behind an echo of what we once had. And with each passing day, I wrestled with anger, confusion, and the aching loneliness that settled in like an unwelcome guest. But amidst the sadness, something unexpected started to stir. One evening, as I sat by my bedroom window watching the city lights flicker, I realized I had a choice. I could drown in the memories, or I could start picking up the pieces and figure out who I was without him. It wasn't easy to admit, but I needed to find myself again. I began forcing myself out of the house, even when I didn't want to. I met friends for coffee, went to yoga classes, and started journaling every night. Writing became my escape, pouring out the raw, messy feelings that tangled inside me and slowly untangling them one word at a time. It was like learning to breathe again after being underwater for too long. One day, a close friend noticed the change in me and invited me to a weekend hiking trip. I was hesitant at first, still dragging the weight of heartbreak with me, but I agreed. That trip turned out to be a turning point. Being surrounded by nature, fresh air, and laughter reminded me that life was bigger than pain and loss. On the trail, as the sun peeked through the trees, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in weeks: hope. Sharing stories with new faces, hearing their struggles and triumphs, I realized I wasn't alone in feeling broken sometimes. And maybe, just maybe, healing wasn't about forgetting, but learning to live with the cracks. When I got back, I looked at my phone differently. Instead of waiting for a message from him that might never come, I started reaching out to old friends I'd lost touch with. Rebuilding those connections helped me see that my world was wider than the space he once filled. It was messy and imperfect, but it was mine. Not everything healed overnight. There were still nights when I'd lie awake, heart pounding, replaying every moment, every word. But those moments became fewer, less sharp. Slowly, the pain softened from a sharp stab to a dull ache, and eventually to a quiet whisper that reminded me I'd survived. I also began to confront things about myself I'd ignored during our relationship, my fears, my dreams, my boundaries. It was uncomfortable and sometimes terrifying, but necessary. I realized I'd been living for us, and in the process, I'd lost sight of who I was. Now, I was determined to find her again. Amidst all this, I stumbled across a new passion, painting. I started with small sketches, nothing fancy, just colors and shapes that reflected how I felt inside. It was messy and chaotic, but in that chaos, I found freedom. Each brushstroke was a tiny rebellion against the sadness that tried to cage me. One afternoon, as I painted a canvas with swirling blues and fiery reds, my phone buzzed. It was him. My heart stopped. I stared at the screen, hands trembling, but instead of rushing to answer, I took a deep breath and reminded myself how far I'd come. This time, I wasn't sure what I wanted to say, or if I even wanted to say anything at all. That night, I wrote down everything I felt: anger, confusion, longing, and strength. I didn't send the message. I just needed to get it out, to acknowledge that he was still a part of my story, but no longer the author. And in that act of writing and choosing silence, I felt a strange kind of power. The days rolled on, and I kept painting, hiking, and reconnecting with myself. I learned to enjoy my own company, to find joy in small moments: a good book, a sunset, a cup of tea. Life wasn't perfect, but it was real, and that was enough for now. One evening, I went back to that park bench where I had spent hours crying and thinking about what went wrong. Sitting there, I watched the leaves fall gently around me, each one a reminder that letting go was part of growing. I wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time, I felt ready to face it head-on. And so, this breakup that once felt like the end of everything slowly became the catalyst for a new beginning. Not the kind I had planned, but maybe the one I really needed. The kind that teaches you about resilience, self-love, and the messy, beautiful process of becoming whole again. But the story isn't over, not by a long shot. There are still days when the past sneaks in like a shadow, when I question if I'm really okay. Yet, every time those doubts arise, I remind myself that healing isn't linear. It's a winding road, filled with setbacks and surprises, and I'm learning to walk it with courage, one step at a time. I'm sharing this here because maybe someone else out there is sitting in that same gray space, feeling lost and broken. And if you are, know this: it's okay to hurt, to cry, to feel like everything is falling apart. But it's also okay to hold on to hope, to reach for light even when it seems distant. We're all in this messy journey together. So that's where I'm at, somewhere between heartbreak and healing, between who I was and who I'm becoming. It's messy, confusing, and sometimes terrifying, but it's mine. And somehow, that makes all the difference. Yesterday, I bumped into him unexpectedly at a bookstore downtown. My heart did that familiar flip, the one that feels like it might break or burst with a single beat. We exchanged awkward hellos, and for a moment, I almost forgot the years of pain that had passed. But then I remembered the person I'd become, the woman who could look him in the eye and smile without losing herself. We talked briefly, stumbling over words like teenagers meeting after years apart. He looked different, maybe a little older, a little softer around the edges, and I wondered if he felt the same storm inside me or if he'd already found his calm. There was no bitterness, just a quiet acknowledgement of what we once had and what we'd lost. Walking away from that encounter, I felt a strange sense of closure and a fresh surge of uncertainty. It was like opening a door I thought was sealed shut, and suddenly, the path ahead seemed both daunting and full of possibility. I'm still figuring out what that means, but I know one thing for sure: this breakup changed everything, and I'm still learning how to live with that. Tonight, as I sit by my window again, the city lights twinkling like distant stars, I feel the weight of all these moments: heartbreak, hope, fear, and courage, all tangled together in a messy, beautiful knot. And maybe that's what life is, a collection of moments that shape us, break us, and ultimately make us whole. I don't have all the answers, and I'm not sure when the pain will fully fade, but I'm starting to believe that's okay. Maybe the point isn't to erase the past, but to carry it with us as a reminder of how far we've come and how strong we really are beneath the cracks. So here I am, still walking this unpredictable road, still learning to trust myself, and still hopeful that the best chapters are yet to come. And if you're reading this and feeling lost, know that somewhere, someone is rooting for you too. Because sometimes, the hardest endings lead to the most unexpected beginnings.